Dr. Watson visits his friend, the famous detective Sherlock Holmes, and finds him in conversation with a new client, Jabez Wilson. Wilson, a pawnbroker with bright red hair, tells about a strange organization called the Red-Headed League. His assistant, Vincent Spaulding, pointed out an advertisement for a vacancy in this organization, which offered a well-paid job only for red-haired men. Wilson applied and was accepted for the job, which involved copying pages from the Encyclopedia Britannica for 4 hours a day. He worked there for 8 weeks, receiving good pay, until one day he discovered that the Red-Headed League was suddenly dissolved, and his boss, Duncan Ross, disappeared. Wilson was puzzled and worried as he lost his source of income and decided to seek help from Sherlock Holmes. Holmes begins the investigation and finds out that Spaulding, who works for Wilson at half price, is actually a criminal named John Clay. Holmes suspects that the Red-Headed League was just a cover to distract Wilson from his pawn shop, while Clay and his accomplices dug a tunnel to the neighboring bank. Holmes and Watson visit Wilson's pawn shop, where Holmes checks the knees of Spaulding's trousers to confirm that he has indeed been digging a tunnel. Holmes also notices that Spaulding often goes down to the basement, which confirms his suspicions. Holmes devises a plan and, together with Watson and the police, sets up an ambush at the bank. In the end, they catch Clay and his accomplice at the scene of the crime, preventing the robbery. Wilson thanks Holmes for his help, and Holmes explains to Watson how he solved the mystery using his deductive skills and observation. He notes that the advertisement for the Red-Headed League was too strange to be true, and that Spaulding behaved suspiciously from the very beginning. Watson, impressed by Holmes's insight, can't help but ask a few questions about the details of the investigation. Holmes, smiling, explains that the key point was Spaulding's behavior. He always found an excuse to go down to the basement, which was unusual for an ordinary assistant in a pawn shop. Moreover, his knees were constantly dirty with soil, indicating digging. Holmes also noted that the advertisement for the Red-Headed League was too tempting to be true. It caught Holmes's attention with its oddity and the fact that it required Wilson to leave the pawn shop for a long time. This gave the criminals the opportunity to work on their plan without interference. On the day Holmes and Watson set up the ambush, they were ready for any development. The police took positions in the bank, and Holmes and Watson watched the pawn shop. When Clay and his accomplice began to make their way through the tunnel, the police quickly apprehended them. Clay, realizing that his plan had failed, tried to resist but was quickly subdued. After the arrest of Clay and his accomplice, Holmes and Watson returned to Baker Street, where Holmes continued to explain the details of the case. He emphasized that his success was based on attention to detail and the ability to see the unusual in the ordinary. Watson, as always, was impressed and admired his friend.